Hello and welcome to another Lamb Bible Study. My name is James, your Bible reader and host for Lamb Bible Study. So we made it to another Lamb Bible Study. Very excited. And I hope today has been a wonderful day for you. And if not, welcome to Lamb Bible Study. And so I pray and hope that we continue to seek the Lord's wisdom through his holy word together. And we will be picking off in 2 Kings chapter 6 today, picking up in 2 Kings chapter 6 today. And I'm currently reading from NIV Collegiate Bible. Today it's been an okay day. It's been a good day, I would say, for myself and for things that have happened today. Some unexpected good things too, right? That does happen. Let's get started with today's Lamp Bible Study, again in 2 Kings chapter 6. An axe head floats. The company of the prophets said to Elisha, "Look, the place where we meet with you is too small for us. Let us go to the Jordan, where each of us can get a pole, and let us build a place there for us to live." And he said, "Go." Then one of them said, "Won't you please come with your servants?" "I will," Elijah replied, and he went with them. They went to the Jordan and began to cut down trees. As one of them was cutting down a tree, the iron axe head fell into the water. "Oh, my Lord," he cried out, "it was borrowed." The man of God asked, "Where did it fall?" When he showed him the place, Elisha cut a stick and threw it there, and made the iron float. "Lift it out," he said. Then the man reached out his hand and took it. So where we left off is that we are now with the prophet Elisha. So Elisha was the understudy prophet for Elijah, who was taken up on in the whirlwind. And so he is no longer on the earth as he's been taking up in the whirlwind. And so this whole time Elisha was learning and studying under Elijah. And so now Elijah is the prophet, and he is going around and he is doing what the Lord commands him to do. And so in this case, he also, just like Elijah, was able to part the Jordan by having full faith in the Lord. And so we also know that we just, leaving off from the previous one, that he was doing other miracles. One of them was he healed somebody of leprosy. And we're currently in the time where in Israel, it is a conflicting time because Israel has fallen away. Both Israel, and so now we have two kingdoms. We have the kingdom of Judah and we have the kingdom of Israel, I believe in this time. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And Israel is slowly but surely falling away from the Lord, and they're worshiping other gods. And so it's gotten to the point where there wasn't a huge amount of worshipers of the Lord that were left. And that's where we're currently at. We're currently at where Israel got into the promised land, had everything prepared and done for them, but slowly, generation after generation, because they didn't really, they weren't maybe a part of, they weren't a part of seeing the miracles beforehand, having battles and such. Now they're just having battles because of the lack of faith in the Lord, the lack of worshiping the Lord. And so now we have generation after generation who is starting to not turn to the Lord because they don't see the Lord as their helper at this point, because they were not following the commands. They weren't being taught. It wasn't being really cast down from generation to generation. And those that were trying to teach them, unfortunately, you have people who choose not to believe and not to understand. And when a lot of people choose not to believe because they don't understand. And I always say, especially when it comes to the Bible is the past, present, and the future. And it is wisdom, and it's beyond our knowledge. And we are to pray to the Lord, to ask for wisdom, to ask for understanding, because I believe the Bible is also goes beyond our comprehension. We can comprehend it, but it also speaks as the living word. It's the Lord's living word. And so, again, where we're at is a time right now where Israel's going back and forth between somewhat worshiping the Lord but also worshiping all these other gods and not fully committed to the Lord. And so, let's see here, bringing past to present in our daily walk, are we sometimes not fully committed? Is it sometimes where we're not wanting to listen or listening at all, or wanting to do what the Lord may want us to do, or being impatient or being demanding and wanting to do things in our own time instead of the Lord's? I had a good conversation with somebody, a good friend of mine, about that. Like, we can get it in a point in our lives where we are kind of frustrated for our circumstances, and I always have to have, especially when you're like just venting, we just have to pause and take a step back and understand the reason where our problems really lie. Are we causing them? Did we help cause them? Are we doing anything about it? Or are we just trying to force something? Are we trying to throw more attention and more stuff at it, possibly making it worse, instead of giving it to the Lord, instead of asking the Lord for peace? So there's a lot here. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? There's a lot that we have to go over today, so let's continue to read. Elisha traps blinded Arameans, one or the other. Now the king of Aram was at war with Israel. After conferring with his officials, he said, I will set up my camp in such and such a place. The man of God sent word to the king of Israel, beware of passing that place, because the Arameans are going down there. So the king of Israel checked on the place indicated by the man of God. Time and again, Elisha warned the king, so that he was on his guard in such places. So every time it mentions man of God, I believe it's referring to Elisha. This enraged the king of Aram. He summoned his officers and demanded of them, will you not tell me which of us is on the side of the king of Israel? None of us, my lord the king, said one of his officers, but Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom. Take note of what he said. So what they said, none of us, my lord the king, said one of his officers, but Elisha, the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom. So they're acknowledging the fact that Elisha does get information. He gets information from the Lord. He gets information, and they understand it, but they don't. But at this time, the Arameans, they believe in other gods too. So let's continue to read. Go, find out where he is, the king ordered, so I can send men and capture him. The report came back, he is in Dothan. Then he sent horses and chariots and a strong force there. They went by night and surrounded the city. When the servant of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. Oh, my lord, what shall we do? The servant asked. This is another portion. Take note. This is very important. Take note, because this is something that it's one of those times in the Bible where we can look at for comfort, where we can look at for reassurance, for that we can understand what actually is happening compared to what we see, even what we see, what we hear, what we think. So take note of this. This is a really important part. Let's continue to read. Don't be afraid, the prophet answered. There we go again. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. So things are happening. You're at your wit's end. You're doing everything you think you can. It takes, but there's that little bit of that fear. There's a little bit of that uncertainty. The Lord says time and time again, don't be afraid. So this is what Elijah's saying. Don't be afraid. The prophet answered, those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elijah prayed, O Lord, open his eyes so he may see. I want to reread that. I want to read that again. Not just reread it. I want to read it again. Because this is just really, just think about that. Think about this in our lives, right? And take this into account in your life. I take it into account in my life. Take this into account. Let's reread it together. And Elijah prayed, O Lord, open his eyes so he may see. Sometimes we need that. There's sermon upon sermon in here with just wisdom upon wisdom. Sometimes we need to do that too. We need to take a step back because we know life can be in a rush. It can be very hectic and things need to be done now. Things need to be done now. Now. You got so much time. We can take a moment. Who can pause time? Who can create time? Is it the Lord, right? And so think about that. We can take a step back and pray to the Lord and ask for our eyes to see. If we don't understand what's going on, if we don't understand where the help is, where the reassurance is, where the comfort is, we can take that step and we can pray to the Lord and ask for our eyes to be open, because we don't always see that the Lord's working for us, right? A lot of people always say, I always hear it all the time, oh, the Lord works for us. He works in the background. And I'm just like, the background of your physicality, he works in the foreground. He works in front of us. He works for us. He doesn't work against us. He doesn't work in the background. So we can pray. We can ask for guidance and understanding and peace about situation. So what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elijah. As the enemy came down toward him, Elijah prayed to the Lord, strike these people with blindness. So he struck them with blindness as Elijah had asked. Elijah told them, this is not the road and this is not the city. Follow me, and I will lead you to the man you are looking for. So they're looking for him, but he prayed to the Lord that they be struck with blindness. And so now they're all blind. So he's telling them, because they're all blind at this point. And he led them to Samaria. So he's leading the army that's going up against Israel, that wants to take Elijah and capture him. He's leading them right into the heart of Israel, right into the heart. Let's continue to read. After they entered the city, Elijah said, Lord, open the eyes of these men so they can see. Then the Lord opened their eyes and they looked, and there they were inside Samaria. When the king of Israel saw them, he asked Elisha, shall I kill them, my father? Shall I kill them? So Elijah's, the Lord just worked another wonder through Elijah. Protected Elijah, is protecting Israel without them having to lift a finger, right? And here comes the king running out, all giddy, all happy, like, wow, this is our enemies. Can I kill him? Can I kill him? That may not be what the Lord has in store. Think about it. Think about it in our lives. A lot of times we want to, as a term, overkill on things. We want to work things to the bone, to the ground. I'm not talking about life and death at this time. I'm talking about actual like working and doing things. And we want to overdo things and create more work for ourselves and just really overdo it when there's not a necessity. The Lord knows what we need, and the Lord can provide, and the Lord overdoes things for us. And so listen to what Elijah says to him. Do not kill them, he answered. Would you kill men who have captured with your own sword or bow? Would you kill men you have captured with your own sword or bow? Set food and water before them so that they may eat and drink and then go back to their master. So he prepared a great feast for them, and after they had finished eating and drinking, he sent them away, and they returned to their master. So the bands from Aram stopped raiding Israel's territory. Wow. Nobody needed to die. It was not necessary. The wondrous miracle happened to an understanding of creating fear, creating understanding that there is a living God within Aram. And so they stopped immediately trying to invade Israel, trying to attack the people. And that's what we need to think about when we take our moment and pray to the Lord, is that sometimes there's not anything we need to do further. Sometimes we need to give that control, that control to the Lord, and really think about it in our lives and really understand that the Lord's working for us and he's already taken care of it. He's already won the battle. He's already won it. Now it's just time is playing out. Just things are playing out as they have to. And how we know is that things fall in line. The Lord speaks and we listen. Meditate on his word. Listen. Have a relationship with him. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this? How does it make you feel and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Famine in Besieged Samaria. Sometime later, Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, mobilized his entire army and marched up and laid siege to Samaria. There was a great famine in the city. The siege lasted so long that a donkey's head sold for 80 shekels of silver and a quarter of a cab of seed pods for 5 shekels. As the king of Israel was passed by on the wall, a woman cried to him, "Help me, my lord the king." The king replied, "If the Lord does not help you, where can I get help for you? From the threshing floor? From the winepress?" Then he asked her, "What's the matter?" So, as we can see, the king of Israel is not really faithful or trusting into the Lord, right? So he's just kind of like, if the Lord's not helping you, what do you think I can do? Because it's a famine. So let's continue to read. She answered, "This woman said to me, 'Give up your son so we may eat him today, and tomorrow we'll eat my son.' So we cooked my son and ate him. The next day I said to her, 'Give up your son so we may eat him.' But she had hidden him." This is extremely difficult because here you have Israel that at this point, generation after generation after generation now has rejected the Lord. And they knew from the beginning when the Lord gave them the land and they did the blessings and the cursings, and they said that we would, as a people, follow the Lord. They won't turn from the right or to the left. And instead, generation and after generation, this has happened. And the Lord's now sending prophet after seer after seer after prophet to warn and help were as much as possible, but they're refusing. And so he told them before, it was prophesied that if they did prostitute themselves, like worship other idols, do detestable things, not follow the law, not follow the rules and such, that bad things would happen. And now they're to the point where they're doing things that the Canaanites did before them did, including eating each other. It shows you just how bad humanity can get. It gives you a window into understanding that the slippery slope is a slippery slope. It's a slope and it can go down pretty quickly. And it shows us just how far people will go. Let's continue to read. When the king heard the woman's words, he tore his robes. As he went along the wall, the people looked, and there, underneath, he had sackcloth on his body. He said, "May God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if the head of Elijah, son of Shaphat, remains on his shoulders today." So this person, this ruler, was blaming Elijah, who was a prophet of the Lord. He was blaming Elijah for him and his kingdom not following the Lord, not doing what they were supposed to be doing, not relying on the Lord, by worshiping false prophets or false gods, by listening to false prophets. And so here to a point where bad things are good and good things are bad. And that's what we're seeing here. And so let's continue to read. Now Elijah was sitting in his house, and the elders were sitting with him. The king sent a messenger ahead, but before he arrived, Elijah said to the elders, "Don't you see how this murderer is sending someone to cut off my head?" Elijah already knew. "Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door and hold it shut against him. Is not the sound of his master's footsteps behind him?" While he was still talking to them, the messenger came down to him, and the king said, "This disaster is from the Lord. Why should I wait for the Lord any longer?" So literally, the king of Israel is blaming the Lord. Like, instead of humbling himself, instead of acknowledging, yes, I'm a sinner. Yes, we were not worshiping you. We were not following the commands. We were not relying on you. We were relying on what have you. Instead of humbling himself, he doesn't. He acts pompous and arrogant. Think about it. When times get tough, do we do those things? Do we think, "Oh, I can solve this. We can do," and then it gets worse? Think about that in our lives. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Elijah said, "Hear the word of the Lord. This is what the Lord says. About this time tomorrow, a seah of flour will sell for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria." The officer on whose army the king was leaning said to the man of God, "Look, even if the Lord should open the floodgates of the heavens, could this happen?" "You will see it with your own eyes," answered Elijah, "but you will not eat any of it." Remember that. Take note. So literally, he's telling them that this time tomorrow, they will be okay. He's also telling the person that questioned Elijah's prophecy, he said, "You're going to see it, but more than likely, because this person that was questioning Elijah didn't have faith at all, he's telling them, you're not going to eat of it." So we need to also understand. So when sometimes help can come in many different forms, including someone coming in out of nowhere and trying to help the situation. We need to take a moment to listen, because at any time the Lord could be speaking to us. The Lord could be trying to show us something and we're not getting it. We miss it. And when we miss it, you can miss out. You can miss out on that blessing. And we don't want to, right? So think about that in our lives, in your life, in my life, how we need to listen and pay attention, and then have faith and understanding and encouragement from the Lord. Think about those things. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this portion? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. The siege lifted. Now there were 4 men with leprosy at the entrance of the city gate. They said to each other, "Why stay here until we die? If we say we'll go into the city, the famine is there, and we will die. And if we stay here, we will die. So let's go over to the camp of the Arameans and surrender. If they spare us, we live. If they kill us, then we die." I mean, that's tough. When you're in a situation where you're at like almost any direction you go, it's like, well, we can die here or we can die there. That's tough. Like, that's how serious the situation got in Israel, because they had fallen so far away from the Lord. They were doing the detestable things that the Lord did not like, even though the Lord was living amongst them. So let's continue to read. At dusk, they got up and went to the camp of the Arameans. When they reached the edge of the camp, not a man was there, for the Lord had caused. Listen to this. This is good, or this is all of it's good. But listen to this. Take note. When they reached the edge of the camp, not a man was there, for the Lord had caused the Arameans to hear the sound of chariots and horses and a great army, so that they said to one another, "Look, the king of Israel has hired the Hittite and Egyptian kings to attack us." So they got up and fled in the dusk and abandoned their tents and their horses and donkeys. They left the camp as it was and ran for their lives. Again, Lord was at work. The Lord did it. Israel didn't have to do anything. They didn't even have to fear. Think about that. They didn't even have to fear. Think about it in our lives. A lot of times we say, oh, this is really difficult situation and such. A lot of that is driven, a lot of not understanding and such is driven by fear. It's one of those underlying things. You may want to say, oh no, I don't fear. I'm so this and that and everything. But trust and believe, under all of that fake strength that we think we have, is that fear. Whatever that fear may be, life or death, harm, whatever that fear may be, well-being. Think about that. When we don't have to fear. We can have our full faith in the Lord and not fear and be comforted. Let's continue to read. The men who had leprosy reached the edge of the camp and entered one of the tents. They ate and drank and carried away silver, gold, and clothes and went off and hid them. They returned and entered another tent and took some things from it and hid them also. Interesting, right? These are men with leprosy. They went out of the city because they were like, well, there's famine here. We're just going to die anyways. And now they ran unto abundance. Then they said to each other, we're not doing right. Let's take note of this. So these men who were had leprosy, said, we're not doing right. We see all this stuff and we're taking it for ourselves, but something's not right. So they're holding themselves accountable. We are not right. Bringing past to present, this is for us. Do we do that sometimes in our lives? Do we get selfish? Do we get glutton? Are we gluttons? Yes, unfortunately. And so think about that, and think about when you feel that certain way, when you feel like you, even that guilt or those feelings of stops, and really think about it and give it to the Lord and say, I don't think I'm doing right. And the Lord will guide us, right? Let's continue to read. This is a day of good news, and we are keeping it to ourselves. If we wait until daylight, punishment will overtake us. Let's go at once and report this to the royal palace. So there you go. There you have it. They understood that they weren't doing right. They took it into an account and they wanted to change things and fix it. And that's what they did. So they went and called out to the city gatekeepers and told them, we went into the Aramean camp and not a man was there. Not a sound of anyone. Only tethered horses and donkeys, and the tents left just as they were. The gatekeeper shouted the news, and it was reported within the palace. The king got up in the night and said to his officers, I will tell you what the Arameans have done to us. They know we are starving, so they have left the camp to hide in the countryside, thinking they will surely come out, and then we will take them alive and get into the city. So this is what the king's saying. The king, remember, the king doesn't believe. He doesn't care. He only cares about himself at this point. He's already blaming the Lord for everything. And the Lord already done took care of the situation. Let's continue to read. One of his officers answered, and that's another thing before I continue. Don't harden our hearts. Don't harden ourselves to when the blessings do come. Don't think that we're not good enough either, right? Because the Lord loves us that much. He loves us so much that he sent his son to die for our sins and to be our savior. That's how much. That's above anything at all. A complete sacrifice for us, for you and I, right? So when the blessings come, don't harden yourself and feel like you don't deserve it, because that is nothing but the devil. Devil wants you to be like him, miserable. And, it's one of those things, misery loves company. But in this case, it's like not short term. He wants you to believe that you're not worth it. And you are. Every single one of us is worth it. We all each have a story. And the Lord loves us, and he wants to be with us. Reading over this portion, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. One of his officers answered, have some men take 5 of the horses that are left in the city. Their plight will be like that of all the Israelites left here. Yes, they will only be like these Israelites who are doomed. So let us send them to find out what happened. He's basically saying they're going to die anyway, so just send them. So they selected 2 chariots with their horses, and the king sent them after the Aramean army. He commanded the drivers, go and find out what has happened. They followed them as far as the Jordan, and they found the whole road strewn with the clothing and equipment the Arameans had thrown away in their headlong flight. So the messengers returned and reported to the king. Then the people went out and plundered the camp of the Arameans. So a seah of flour sold for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley sold for a shekel, as the Lord had said. Lord said something, we're to believe it. Listen, because it's coming. Let's continue to read. Those blessings are coming. Let's continue to read. Now, the king had put the officer on whose arm he leaned in charge of the gate, and the people trampled him in the gateway, and he died, just as the man of God had foretold when the king came down to his house. Remember that person that said, this is really going to happen? It did happen, and guess what? Now he's dead. About this time tomorrow, a seah of flour will... Okay, so When the king came down, I'm going to go back. When the king came down to his house, it happened as the man of God had said to the king. About this time tomorrow, a seah of flour will sell for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria. The officer had said to the man of God, look, even if the Lord should open the floodgates of the heavens, could this happen? The man of God had replied, you will see it with your own eyes, but you will not eat any of it. And that is exactly what happened to him. For the people trampled him in the gateway, and he died. Surprise. You know? So let's not miss out on our blessing. Listen, be patient, pray to the Lord, humble ourselves, ask for wisdom, ask for understanding of what's going on, ask for our eyes to be open. It's definitely something that we can pray for. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? I'm going to do a quick pause. Okay. Had a little quick edit, or not edit, but a quick thing I had to do real fast because I heard something. All right, let's continue to read. The Shunammite's land restored. Now Elisha had said to the woman whose son he had restored to life, go away with your family and stay for a while wherever you can, because the Lord has decreed a famine in the land that will last 7 years. The woman proceeded to do as the man of God said. She and her family went away and stayed in the land of the Philistines 7 years. At the end of the 7 years, she came back from the land of the Philistines and went to the king to beg for her house and land. The king was talking to Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, and had said, tell me about all the great things Elijah has done. Just as Gehazi was telling the king, now Elijah had restored the dead to life. The woman whose son Elijah had brought back to life came to beg the king for her house and land. Gehazi said, this is the woman, my lord the king, and this is her son whom Elijah restored to life. The king asked the woman about it, and she told him. So interesting. So Gehazi was talking to the king and telling him already about the woman that is now there, and there she is, right? She's there with her son. Let's continue to read. Gehazi said, this is the woman, my lord the king, and this is her son whom Elijah restored to life. The king asked the woman about it, and she told him. Then he assigned an official to her case and said to him, give back everything that belonged to her, including all the income from her land from the day she left the country until now. So basically at this time, things were going a little bit better because, again, the Lord was protecting Israel, right? And so she had came back, and more than likely they just kind of started utilizing her area, her land and her house because it was empty, or maybe somebody else took over or something. But now, or the kingdom, the kingdom took it, and so now she's getting it back and is able to get it back. That's another blessing, right? Think about those things in our lives when things happen for us, and things can get restored for us too, right? Think about those things. How does it make, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this portion? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Hazael murders Ben-Hadad. Elisha went to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, was ill. When the king was told, the man of God has come all the way up here, he said to Hazael, take a gift with you and go to meet the man of God. Consult the Lord through him, ask him, will I recover from this illness? Hazael went to meet Elisha, taking with him as a gift 40 camel loads of all the finest wares of Damascus. He went in and stood before him and said, your son Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, has sent me to ask, will I recover from this illness? Elisha answered, go and say to him, you will certainly recover, but the Lord has revealed to me that he will in fact die. Okay, let me read that again. Elijah answered, go and say to him, you will certainly recover, but the Lord has revealed to me that he will in fact die. He stared at him with a fixed gaze until Hazael felt ashamed. Then the man of God began to weep. "Why is my Lord weeping?" asked Hazael. "Because I know the harm you will do to the Israelites," he answered. "You will set fire to their fortified places, kill their young men with the sword, dash their little children to the ground, and rip open their pregnant women." Hazael said, "How could your servant, a mere dog, accomplish such a feat?" "The Lord has shown me that you will become king of Aram," answered Elisha. Then Hazael left Elisha and returned to his master. When Ben-Hadad asked, "What did Elijah say to you?" Hazael replied, "He told me that you would certainly recover." But the next day he took a thick cloth, soaked it in water, and spread it over the king's face, so that he died. Then Hazael succeeded him as king. So Hazael really is not a good person. Even the king of Aram, Ben-Hadad, he knew of the Lord, and so he may have not fully, I'm not quite sure, I don't believe he fully worshiped, but he knew of the Lord, and he knew that Elijah was a prophet and a holy man. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's why he sent Hazael. And then Hazael goes, he's like, "Okay, I'll go, I'll do this." And then Elijah tells them a prophecy. Elijah's like, "Yeah, he's going to recover, but you know, and I know that you're basically that Hazael." Elijah knows that Hazael's going to kill him. And then he starts weeping because he's already been shown through the Lord what Hazael's going to do with Aram. How he's going to invade Israel. And so that's it affected him, and that can affect us when we see pain and we see heartache. That affects us, and those emotions are humanly, and that is okay to feel and to have sympathy and empathy for people when they're struggling and want to reach out and help people, and because we are to love each other, we are to love our neighbor as ourselves. And we are to help each other when we're there, when we can. And so think about those things and pray about those things. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Jehoram, king of Judah. So now we're going back. So remember the second king. So it goes back and forth. Judah, Israel, Judah, Israel. So now we're going back to Judah. In the 5th year of Joram, son of Ahab, king of Israel, when Jehoshaphat was king of Judah, Joram, son of Jehoshaphat, began his reign as king of Judah. He was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 8 years. He walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, as the house of Ahab had done, for he married a daughter of Ahab. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Nevertheless, for the sake of his servant David, the Lord was not willing to destroy Judah. He had promised to maintain a lamp for David and his descendants forever, which still remains true to this day. What we have here is another comparison. So again, since David, it goes back and compares kings and what their walk with the Lord was. Either they follow like David's lead, walking in the ways of the Lord as close as really close, and following the Lord and following the commandments, or the kings of Israel, which were worshiping other gods and doing detestable acts. And in this case, we have a king of Judah who is following in the kings of Israel. So not good. He was doing evil in the eyes of the Lord. Let's continue to read. In the time of Joram, Edom rebelled against Judah and set up its own king. So Joram went to Zair with all his chariots. The Edomites surrounded him and his chariot commanders, but he rose up and broke through by night. His army, however, fled back home. To this day, Edom has been in rebellion against Judah. Libnah revolted at the same time. As for the other events of Joram's reign and all he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Joram rested with his fathers and was buried with them in the city of David. And Ahaziah, his son succeeded him as king. So Joram, of course, didn't follow the Lord, so more stuff started happening. The Edomites rebelled, and so did another group, which is the Libnah. So that was all a part of what the Lord had told Israel. You don't follow the commands, there's going to be thorns and thistles. And that's what's happening. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Ahaziah, king of Judah. In the 12th year of Joram, son of Ahab, king of Israel, Ahaziah, son of Joram, king of Judah, began to reign. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 1 year. His mother's name was Athaliah, a granddaughter of Omri, king of Israel. He walked in the ways of the house of Ahab and did evil in the eyes of the Lord, as the house of Ahab had done, for he was related by marriage to Ahab's family. Uzziah went with Joram, son of Ahab, to war against Hazael, king of Aram, at Ramoth-Gilead. The Arameans wounded Joram, so King Joram returned to Jezreel to recover from the wounds the Arameans had inflicted on him at Ramoth in his battle with Hazael, king of Aram. Then Ahazi, son of Joram, king of Judah, went down to Jezreel to see Joram, son of Ahab, because he had been wounded. So, again, another king, following in the ways of the kings of Israel. And that's what we're seeing here. And, of course, things not going good for him. And that's a problem. Especially during the Old Testament and the when Israel was when the Lord was residing with Israel, and they were supposed to be following the law. And so what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Jehu, anointed king of Israel. The prophet Elisha summoned a man from the company of the prophets and said to him, "Tuck your cloak into your belt, take this flask of oil with you, and go to Ramoth-Gilead. When you get there, look for Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi. Go to him, get him away from the companions, and take him into an inner room. Then take the flask and pour the oil on his head and declare, 'This is what the Lord says. I anoint you king over Israel.' Then open the door and run. Don't delay." So the young man, the prophet, went to Ramoth-Gilead. When he arrived, he found the army officers sitting together. "I have a message for you, commander," he said. For which of us?" asked Jehu. "For you, commander," he replied. Jehu got up and went into the house. Then the prophet poured the oil on Jehu's head and declared, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anoint you king over the Lord's people Israel. You are to destroy the house of Ahab, your master, and I will avenge the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the Lord's servants shed by Jezebel. The whole house of Ahab will perish. I will cut off from Ahab every last male in Israel, slave or free. I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, son of Ahijah. As for Jezebel, dogs will devour her on the plot of ground at Jezreel, and no one will bury her." Then he opened the door and ran. He did exactly as the Lord told him to do. When Jehu went out to his fellow officers, one of them asked, "Is everything all right? Why did this madman come to you?" "You know the man and the sort of things he says," Jehu replied. "That's not true," they said. "Tell us." Jehu said, "Here is what he told me. This is what the Lord says. I anoint you king over Israel." They hurried and took their cloaks and spread them under him on the bare steps. Then they blew the trumpet and shouted, "Jehu is king." So they knew that what the prophets would do, what did, especially when they anointed somebody king, what they would do. So he had the oil poured over his head, and he told them what happened. And so they're like, "Whoa, you've been declared the king of Israel, and you've been anointed by the prophet. So this is happening." So at this time, it's kind of like a mixed bag. They understand the Lord. They know of the Lord. They know they know that the Lord has prophets and works through his prophets and such, but yet they don't fully rely on the Lord. Or they mix their their worship of the Lord with other worship of other gods. So it's kind of, and then there's some people that still did believe in the Lord and still did follow the Lord. So these people, so Israel knew and understood what was going on. Those soldiers knew and understood what was going on, that Jehu was just anointed king and he's going to be king of Israel. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Jehu kills Joram and Ahaziah. So Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, the son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram. Now Joram and all Israel had been defending Ramoth-Gilead against Hazael, king of Aram. But King Joram had returned to Jezreel to recover from the wounds the Arameans had inflicted on him in the battle with Hazael, king of Aram. Jehu said, "If this is the way you feel, don't let anyone slip out of the city to go and tell the news to in Jezreel." Then he got into his chariot and rode to Jezreel, because Joram was resting there, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, had gone down to see him. When the lookout standing on the tower in Jezreel saw Jehu's troops approaching, he called out, "I see some troops coming. Get a horseman," Joram ordered. "Send him to meet them and ask, 'Do you come in peace?'" The horseman rode off to meet Jehu and said, "This is what the king says. Do you come in peace?" "What do you have to do with peace?" Jehu replied. "Fall in behind me." The lookout reported, "The messenger has reached them, but he isn't coming back." So the king sent out a second horseman. When he came to them, he said, "This is what the king says. Do you come in peace?" Jehu replied, "What do you have to do with peace? Fall in behind me." The lookout reported, "He has reached them, but he isn't coming back either." The driving is like that of Jehu, son of Nimshi. He drives like a man. So you're starting to get a sense that, there's about to be conflict. Because Jehu was just anointed king of Israel. And and he's going over here. He's headed towards the kings, both of Israel and of Judah. So let's continue reading. "Hitch up my chariot," Joram ordered. And when it was hitched up, Joram, king of Israel, and Ahaziah, king of Judah, rode out, each in his own chariot, to meet Jehu. They met him at the plot of ground that had belonged to Naboth the Jezreelite. When Joram saw Jehu, he asked, "Have you come in peace, Jehu?" "How can there be peace?" Jehu replied, "as long as all the adultery and witchcraft of your mother Jezebel abound." Joram turned about and fled, calling out to Ahaziah, "Treachery, Ahaziah!" Then Jehu drew his bow and shot Joram between the shoulders. The arrow pierced his heart, and he slumped down in his chariot. Jehu said to Bidkar, his chariot officer, "Pick him up and throw him on the field that belonged to Naboth the Jezreelite. Remember how you and I were riding together in chariots behind Ahab his father when the Lord made this prophecy about him. Yesterday I saw the blood of Naboth and the blood of his sons, declares the Lord, and I will surely make you pay for it on this plot of ground, declares the Lord. Now then, pick him up and throw him on that plot." In accordance with the word of the Lord, when Ahaziah, king of Judah, saw what had happened, he fled up the road to Beth-Hagan. Jehu chased him, shouting, "Kill him too." They wounded him in his chariot on the way up to Gur near Ibleam, but he escaped to Megiddo and died there. His servants took him by chariot to Jerusalem and buried him with his fathers in his tomb in the city of David. In the 11th year of Joram, son of Ahab, Ahaziah had become king of Judah. So now both kings, king of Israel and king of Judah, are dead, and Jehu had them killed. Let's continue to read. Or actually, so again, once again, prophecy came true, came to light, and now has came through, and everything Jehu did was already prophesied. So what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind about this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Jezebel killed. Then Jehu went to Jezreel. When Jezebel heard about it, she painted her eyes, arranged her hair, and looked out of a window. And as Jehu entered the gate, she asked, "Have you come in peace, Zimri, you murderer of your master?" So remember, Jezebel is like, it's basically just straight up evil. You know, she worshipped other gods. She didn't like any of the Lord's prophets, so she had them killed, or was having them killed, and so now, her time has come. Let's continue to read. He looked up at the window and called out, "Who is on my side? Who?" 2 or 3 eunuchs looked down at him. "Throw her down," Jehu said. So they threw her down, and some of her blood spattered the wall and the horses as they trampled her underfoot. Jehu went in and ate and drank. "Take care of that cursed woman," he said, "and bury her, for she was a king's daughter." But when they went out to bury her, they found nothing except her skull, her feet, and her hands. They went back and told Jehu, who said, "This is the word of the Lord that he spoke through his servant Elijah the Tishbite. On the plot of ground at Jezreel, dogs will devour Jezebel's flesh. Jezebel's body will be like refuse on the ground in the plot at Jezreel, so that no one will be able to say, 'This is Jezebel.'" So remember, that was all the way with Elijah. Elijah had prophesied that about Jezebel, and now it has passed. So people who do wrong, there's always time limit. It's always time limit. Think about those things in your life and my life. Think about those things. There's always a time limit. But there's no time limit when it comes to the joy and love of the Lord. Think about that too. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind when we read over this? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Looks like we're going to go over just a little bit today. Let's continue to read. Ahab's family killed. Now there were in Samaria 70 sons of the house of Ahab. So Jehu wrote letters and sent them to Samaria, to the officials of Jezreel, to the elders, and to the guardians of Ahab's children. He said, "As soon as this letter reaches you, since your master's sons are with you, and you have chariots and horses, a fortified city and weapons," excuse me, woo. That was that moment that I needed to, that was from me having to do that technical issue. He said, "As soon as this letter reaches you, since your master's sons are with you, and you have chariots and horses, a fortified city and weapons, choose the best and most worthy of your master's sons and set him on his father's throne. Then fight for your master's house." But they were terrified and said, "If 2 kings cannot resist him, how can we?" So think about that. Think about that in our lives too. You know, he's telling them what's about to happen, and they're worried because they are saying, if 2 kings cannot resist him, how can we? And think about that, what they're saying back in this day, during this time period, and what they're feeling, what they're thinking about this. Okay, so let's continue to read. But they were terrified and said, "If 2 kings cannot resist him, now how can we?" So the palace administrator, the city governor, the elders, and the guardians sent this message to Jehu: "We are your servants, and we will do anything you say. We will not appoint anyone as king. You do whatever you think best." Then Jehu wrote them a second letter, saying, "If you are on my side and will obey me, take the heads of your master's sons and come to me in Jezreel by this time tomorrow." Now the royal princes, 70 of them, were with the leading men of the city, who were rearing them. When the letter arrived, these men took the princes and slaughtered all 70 of them. They put their heads in baskets and sent them to Jehu in Jezreel. When the messenger arrived, he told Jehu, "They have brought the heads of the princes." Remember, he was told that he would be ending those families, the family of Ahab and such. So this is part of the, I think it's Ahab, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is part of the prophecy coming to truth, coming to happen. So let's continue to read. Then Jehu ordered put them in the two piles at the entrance of the city gate until morning. The next morning, Jehu went out. He stood before all the people and said, "You are innocent. It was I who conspired against my master and killed him. But who killed all these? Who killed all these? Know then that not a word the Lord has spoken against the house of Ahab will fail. The Lord has done what he promised through his servant Elijah." So Jehu killed everyone in Jezreel who remained of the house of Ahab, as well as all his chief men, his close friends, and his priests, leaving him no survivor. Jehu then set out and went toward Samaria. At Beth-Eked of the shepherds, he met some relatives of Hazael, king of Judah, and asked, "Who are you?" They said, "We are relatives of Hazael, and we have come down to greet the families of the king and of the queen mother." "Take them alive," he ordered. So they took them alive and slaughtered them by the well of Beth-Eked. 42 men, he left no survivor. After he left there, he came upon Jehonadab, son of Rechab, who was on his way to meet him. Jehu greeted him and said, "Are you in accord with me as I am with you?" "I am," Jehonadab answered. "If so," said Jehu, "give me your hand." So he did, and Jehu helped him up into the chariot. Jehu said, "Come with me and see my zeal for the Lord." Then he had him ride along in his chariot. When Jehu came to Samaria, he killed all who were left there of Ahab's family. He destroyed them, according to the word of the Lord spoken to Elijah. So he's fulfilling it. He's fulfilling what was told of the prophecy, and he's doing what he was there to do. So let's see how he does. Let's see how he continues on. And so this is, again, a fulfilling of the prophecy and things being told. And so all these people who did bad, their consequence was not continuing to rule Israel, not continuing to be a ruler. Lord was taking away their kingship and their rulerships so that they wouldn't have a dynasty. So reading over this, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Ministers of Baal killed. Then Jehu brought all the people together and said to them, this is another, take note of this too. "Ahab served Baal a little. Jehu will serve him much. Now summon all the prophets of Baal, all his ministers and all his priests. See that no one is missing, because I am going to hold a great sacrifice for Baal. Anyone who fails to come will no longer live." But Jehu was acting deceptively in order to destroy the ministers of Baal. Jehu said, "Call an assembly in honor of Baal." So they proclaimed it. Then he sent word throughout Israel, and all the ministers of Baal came. Not one stayed away. They crowded into the temple of Baal until it was full from one end to the other. And Jehu said to the keeper of the wardrobe, "Bring robes for all the ministers of Baal." So he brought out robes for them. Then Jehu and Jehonadab, son of Rechab, went into the temple of Baal. Jehu said to the ministers of Baal, "Look around and see that no servants of the Lord are here with you, only ministers of Baal." So they went in to make sacrifices and burnt offerings. Now Jehu had posted 80 men outside with this warning: "If one of you lets any of the men I am placing in your hands escape, it will be your life for his life." As soon as Jehu had finished making the burnt offering, he ordered the guards and officers, "Go in and kill them. Let no one escape." So they cut them down with the sword. The guards and officers threw the bodies out and then entered the inner shrine of the temple of Baal. They brought the sacred stone out of the temple of Baal and burned it. They demolished the sacred stone of Baal and tore down the temple of Baal, and people have used it for a latrine to this day. He turned it into the restroom, the bathroom, the laboratory. Nice. Let's continue to read. So Jehu destroyed Baal worship in Israel. However, he did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit, the worship of the golden calves at Bethel and Dan. Remember, because Jeroboam made because he didn't want them to go to worship the Lord, so he made golden calves. And so let's continue reading. The Lord said to Jehu, because you have done well in accomplishing what is right in my eyes, and have done to the house of Ahab all I had in mind to do, your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. Yet Jehu was not careful to keep the law of the Lord, the God of Israel, with all his heart. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, which he had caused Israel to commit. In those days, the Lord began to reduce the size of Israel. Hazael overpowered the Israelites throughout their territory, east of the Jordan and all the land of Gilead, the region of Gad, Reuben, and Manasseh, from Aroer by the Arnon Gorge through Gilead to Bashan. As for the other events of Jehu's reign, all he did and all his achievements, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Jehu rested with his fathers and was buried in Samaria. And Jehoaz, his son, succeeded him as king. The time that Jehu reigned over Israel and Samaria was 28 years. So, as you can see, Israel's starting to shrink. Israel is starting to shrink, and from the promised land, they're starting to. The Lord's allowing for them their size reduction because they're not following the Lord wholeheartedly, and they're worshiping the Baals and whatever. And every now and then someone comes in, turns a prophet or somebody comes and does what's right, but they may not do it fully. And so the Lord slowly but surely taking them away from the promise. And so we'll see what happens, and see what happens next and how it continues. And so when the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, even in our lives, past to present, when we're not doing what the Lord tells us, when we're not having a good relationship with the Lord, things can happen to us, and rightfully so. We can be reduced also. Until we humble ourselves, until we recognize that the Lord is God, and until we are grateful and thankful. So think about those things in our lives too. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's do a quick review. So again, we started here in chapter 6 of 2 Kings. And we started off with about the axe head. Remember, Elisha made the axe head float. A metal piece had flown into, by accident, into water. And of course, iron is really heavy. And, metal is really heavy. And so it went, of course, to the bottom. Elijah, the man of God, threw a stick into the water, and the axe head floated. Amazing, right? Elijah traps blinded Arameans because he had faith. Elijah had faith and knew that the Lord was stronger. The Lord was fighting battles. The Lord was working for him. The Lord works for us. Famine and besieged Samaria. Then we learned that famine had besieged Samaria for some time, and to the point where people were so destitute that they were eating each other. It shows us just how bad it can, and what kind of thoughts and how man can get. It also gives us hope, though, because Elijah was there. He said that this time tomorrow, he basically told them that everything will be fine. The Lord's, because it's like they were refusing. They were refusing. Even the king refused to understand that they needed to humble themselves and ask the Lord for help. And they refused to. But Lord, all loving, was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do them a favor. I'm going to do them a solid. And that's what he did. The siege lifted. The Lord fought the battle. And then the leprosy men had went out, noticed that the Arameans had fled, and they start taking things, but then they start feeling that guilt, like, hey, there's more people starving. There's more people who are having issues. So we should definitely not be selfish. And so they told everybody about, that what they found. And so that helped everybody. And that's when they were able to go and loot all the stuff that the Arameans left, the cattle, the mules and the horses and all the food and clothing and such. So because of the famine. And so they actually had more than enough. The Shunammite had her place restored because she had left because of the famine. She was forewarned and she followed through what the Lord had told her to do. And she came back and got all of her stuff back. Hazael then murders Ben-Hadad, and Elisha weeps for it because he knows that Hazael was not going to be a good person and would come and attack Israel. And then Joram, king of Judah. Now the kings in Judah, we're starting to get kings in Judah that were not completely following the way and not following the laws and the commands. And so things were happening in Judah as well. Uzziah, king of Judah, was just the same. He followed in the ways of the kings of Israel and was leading Judah astray. Jehu then was anointed king of Israel. Jehu went and destroyed the house of Ahab and killed both the king of Israel and the king of Judah. And Jezebel also gets killed as well. She's no longer. She got her just desserts, right? Ahab's family killed. Jehu made sure that he went through and killed the rest of Ahab's family, as well as because none of them worshiped the Lord. They were fully against. They had fully committed against. They were fully committed against the Lord. And then the ministers of Baal were killed. Jehu made sure to get rid of Jezebel's basic main thing of worship, which was the Baal. And so Jehu goes and has all the prophets throughout the land, or the priests and prophets of Baal, come into the city, and then he locks them in the temple and sends the people in to kill him. And that's what happens. And so thus completing everything that the Lord had by prophets told him to do, and he did it. He completed it. So reading over today's Bible study, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Thank you so much for joining me on another Lamp Bible study. They're always exciting. I always get so much information and learn so much from them. And we'll continue on. We'll continue to seek the Lord's wisdom together through his holy word. And please continue to pray for me. I will always continue to pray for you. Lamp Bible studies come out every Tuesdays and Thursdays. There's also highlights throughout the week, as well as flashlights on Fridays. And there's also an Instagram page you can check out, as well as if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, please leave them in the comment section. If you know how to pronounce things correctly, always type those in there, and I thank you for those. As well as if you want to do more with Lamp Bible Study, you can always reach out. There is a contact email on the contacts page in the YouTube channel. So with all of that, I pray that Lamp Bible Study today was just phenomenal for you, that and that you are set, that you understand, and that you know that we can go to the Lord and pray for guidance and pray for hope and pray for healing and pray for everything and humble ourselves and also thank him when the times are great. And so thank you very much once again for joining me. Hope to see you next time. We'll continue our read through 2 Kings, and we'll pick up in chapter 11. So wherever you are, have a blessed morning, a blessed day, a blessed afternoon, a blessed evening, a blessed night. God bless.